All right, we're back. It's COMP305. That's Game Programming 1 in the fall 2016 semester at Centennial, and we are week 6, part 2 of our broadcast. We just finished doing enemy, the enemy object, as well as enemy movement, and that kind of thing. Now we're going to focus on animation, simple animation. We're going to open up our Unity again, and I just put up everything up on GitHub so far. So here's Unity. And this is good. We're all good. You know, everything's fine. But I want to focus on hero animation, right? And I want to make my hero prefab. No problem. So I recommend what we do is we go into scenes and we copy the play scene and we make our enemy or our hero experiment. So remember, I'm making these little experimental scenes so I can kind of reduce all the clutter that I have in the scene. We can also use the enemy scene because all there is the enemy and the hero. That might be good to kind of duplicate. So let's do that. So we're going to duplicate this scene. So we're going to just kind of click onto it and then duplicate. And instead of the enemy, I'm just going to call this hero. There we go. And I'm going to get right into it. So let's go into the hero scene. Here I'm going to make the enemy invisible because I don't need him right now, right? So he's not in the scene anymore. And I'll make the hero visible, and so I'm going to put him into the scene. So I'm going to kind of play the scene, and you can see that there's no more enemy. Well, let's see if try that again. Because there's two enemies. How about that? We make both enemies invisible. There we go. Enemy invisible 1, enemy invisible 2. And now the hero is visible. Let's play that again. Yay. Okay. So now the hero has basic movement, but he's not very good. I want to add in some animations for him and create the hero prefab finally, right? How do we do that? Well, we have a bunch of sprites. And if you look at the hero, there is an idle animation as well as there is a jump animation and walk. And these, when I say animation, they're more like clips, animation clips. And all they are is a bunch of frames, textures, that show the hero in slightly different positions. And they're going to be shown over and over again, every frame for 60 frames per second, as an example. And you're going to see how you're going to flip between frame-based animations. So you're going to flip between frames to create this animation-like effect. Okay. So first things first, I want to add. There's a couple components actually we need. When we look at our hero right now, he's got a bunch of different components. But I want to add another component called the Animator Controller component. Okay. That's what I'm going to add in here. The fastest and easiest way to do this, if I want to add a walk animation, is I'm going to take all the walk animation frames. So there's 15 of them that you have in here. And by the way, it's easier, far easier to do this, whether it's in a sprite sheet or whether they're individual frames like this. Take them all and drag and drop them into your scene like this. Now it's going to ask you to put your animation somewhere, right? And what I want to do is I want to go back out to Assets, and I want to create a new folder called Animations. And that's where I want to put this new animation. Now this is the hero walk animation. So I'm going to call it hero walk, right? And press Save. What this will do is in my Animations folder is going to create two different items. One is my Animator Controller right here, as well as the hero walk clip. This is the hero walk clip. So there's two pieces, the walk, animation. I'm going to call this, just rename it. I only need one of these. I'm going to call this the hero animator. That's what this is, the hero animator and the hero walk clip. That's what this is, right? Okay, now that I have this, I can get rid of this. This is an actual object. If I was to play this object, by the way, you can see that I actually have a little bit of animation. That's what it looks like. Right? If I actually zoom in the scene and I look at this walk sequence, right? This is what it's doing, right? Now, there's nothing attached to this. It's not an object. But what it's doing is it's going through the entire sequence over and over again and repeating itself. And it's just flipping frames. There's 15 frames that it's going through over a 60 frame per second sequence. Okay. So that's one. Let's get rid of it. That's the way we do the clips. Now, notice that there's a couple things here. I have a hero animator. If I double click on this, it pulls up the animator window. Please leave this window open. Notice that in my hero animator window, right, I have, if I click the middle mouse button, I can move this around. I have a couple things. I have the entry state and the default state of my animation, which is my walk animation. So I can change this to walk, hero walk. And actually, if anything, this is the hero walk state, if you will, right? So I can actually change the whole name of it to hero walk state. And that kind of was confusing. So there's a hero walk state or walk state, whatever you want to call it. And it goes from entry right into the hero walk state. And it plays the hero walk clip right here. Here's the hero walk clip. Here's the speed of the hero walk clip. The other thing I can do is if I click on the hero walk clip itself, notice that the hero walk clip is looping. So loop forever. If I double click on the hero walk clip, double click, right? It doesn't do anything right now. However, one thing I like to point out is that you can always do this. If you click on the hero, and if I drag and drop my hero animator onto the hero object itself, notice that it adds in the animator to the hero, right? So the animator itself, this state machine that I made, is going to be added to the hero. Notice that it says clip count is 1. It also has other different details here. If I was to run this game now, you'll see that the hero is always running, even if he's moving one way or the other. But also notice that his animation is flipped when I flip the hero. So when I flip the hero, the animation is also flipped. Doesn't look very right. Something's not right with this whole thing. Okay. Couple of reasons why this isn't right. One, it automatically runs. I want to make a transition from walking to running to idle, right? I want to be able to, and I also want to be able to add jumping, right? So how do I do that? One, I want to open up a new window. So I'm going to go Window, and I'm going to go to Animation Window. So I've got the Animator window open, but I want to go to the Animation window. This is a floating window for now, but what I want to do is I want to pin it to my actual the screen. Notice that by default, the hero walk animation is here, and it's showing samples 12. But I know that there's 15 samples that I have, 15 frames. So I'm going to change this sample rate to 15. So I have all the hero sprites. And if you open this up, you can actually see them all. So 15 sprites, or 15 steps, if you will, in 1 second, right? That's what it's doing. Okay, well, once I have this open and I have the hero walk clip, I can also add other ones. I can add a new clip, right? I can add them so that they're blank if I want to. And I'll do it this way. So I've done it 2 ways. One, dragging and dropping. The first way is taking my sprites for my hero, selecting them all and dragging them, dropping into the scene, and then creating the animation at the beginning. That's the one way of doing it. The other way is, now that I've got it open, I can go create new clip. I can call it what I want. So I'm going to call this the hero idle. Idle. And I'm going to choose my assets, animations, and this is where it's going to go. It's going to make a new clip. But it's going to be empty, like this. So now I can add all of these, which are like 24 frames, I think, up to here, to this by dragging and dropping onto this stage here, onto the dope sheet. That's what this thing is called. Now I want to be careful where I drag it. I want to drag it right to the end and enter, right? Now you can see that there's 24 frames of idle walk, idle animation. I'm going to change the frames, the samples to 24. There we go. There's 24 frames. Okay. And now I have 2, hero walk and hero idle. Because I have in my animations this hero animator, if I go back to this one, you can see now that the hero idle, right, has been added in. And I can rename this one to hero idle state. That's another state, right? Right now, before, my hero walk state was the default state. See this little arrow that points from here to there? That's the default one. I want to make this one the default one, and I can do that by right-clicking and making it the default state. So what happens is it starts off as idle, and I want to be able to transition from this, to the walk state when I click a button, right? This whole engine that I'm using is called Mechanim or Mechanim. There's different ways of pronouncing it, right? Or I've heard people pronounce it different ways, is what I should say. Notice that I have in my clip the name of the clip as well as the speed that it's being played. Right now it's 1:1, so 24 frames per second, right? I can change this to 2 or 0.5 or whatever to increase the frame rate and how many times it's repeated. Okay, let's check this out and see if what happens now with this, because I've changed the default state. So now it's the idle state, which looks like, from a hero perspective, like this, where he's kind of panting. Or he's idle. Problem is, he's idle all the time. See? He's idle here, and he's idle there, and he's idle everywhere. He's even idle when he's jumping. Okay? So what I want to do is, when I press the button to accelerate, I want him to change from idle to walking. That means I want to switch the state. Okay, there's a couple things we need to do to enable that. First, remember that anything we do when we want to change behavior in a game object is we've got to modify the script. That's the first thing we got to do. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Oh, yeah. So we also have the use of the Animator Controller right here. So what I want to do is I want to make a transition between hero idle state and hero walk state. How do I do that? I right-click on hero idle state or hero walk state, and I say make transition. Now there's an arrow that's drawn from the hero walk state to the hero idle state. I'll do the same thing over here. Make transition. Now I've got these two arrows. So when I go from the hero idle state to the hero walk state, there's a transition. And if I click on the transition itself, you can see that there's a bunch of things that are going on here. If I play this thing, you can see what the transition is. It's going to look like this. There's an example here on the bottom right-hand corner of the transition. And if you want to pull it, you can pull it around, right? So you can see what it's going to look like. Now this is a 2D object, so you're going to see it in 3D, unfortunately, because that's the way it's done, right? But you can see what it's going to look like when it transitions from one state to the other. Okay. Nice, nice. But this isn't exactly what we want, right? Let me show you that again. So if I run, it goes from hero idle to hero walk automatically. And that's what's going to happen if I run it right now. If I run this right now, it's going to go do the same thing. It's going to walk and then stop, walk and then stop, walk and then stop. I don't want that. I want to control the change of state. I don't want this thing to change it for me, right? How do I do that? Going back to Animator, what I want to do is create a parameter. I want to assign a state number to each of my states. So hero idle state, I want to arbitrarily assign a number of 0. You can assign whatever number you want. I want to make it 0. So the 0th state. And then when I move to hero walk, I want to make it 1. So I'm going to change states. And the only time it's going to transition is if my hero state itself transitions from a value of 0 to a value of 1. So let's create that parameter. We're going to click on parameters, and we're going to click on this little plus button, and we're going to click at integer parameter. There's other ones you can create as well. Integer parameter. And inside here, we're going to call this hero state. My hero state. And I'm going to start it off at 0. That's the initialization. Okay, cool. Now that I've got this parameter, I can test for it. I can go here to this transition. And down in here, I can say something like this. My condition is if my hero state is equal to 0, right? That's not right. I want to make it equal to 1. When it's equal to 1, I want it to go to the hero walk state. I'm going to click the other arrow. When it comes back from the hero walk state to the hero idle state, I want to make sure that my hero state is equal to 0. So if my hero state is equal to 0, it's going to go back to hero idle. If my hero state is equal to 1, it's going to go to hero walk. Right? From one to the other. I'm just created arbitrary numbers to test to see that that's the case. Okay, cool. That's the state. And I've done this in Mechanim. This is my Animator Controller that I'm using, right? So if I look at my hero now, it doesn't show anything here. The hero Animator Controller, this thing right here, controls how this works. Okay, so it's a separate little file, if you will. Okay, now how do I program it? Well, I need to add a script, some script in here. I already have a script right here. I'm just going to push these up. So I'm going to put my box colliders. Let's just rearrange these. Be careful not to choose remove component. It'll be gone. And they won't ask you, hey, are you sure? Gone. So move up. And I'll move this up again. And I'll keep moving this up until it's with the other one. And then I'm just rearranging. And then I'm going to move this script down. There we go. So there's my animator. So what I want to do is hook into this animator. That's what I want to do, right? So I want to do that the same way I hooked into the camera and the spawn point. Okay, so how do I do that? So I'm going to go to my scripts, double click on my hero controller or my player controller, and on the top, where I've made references to my camera, right? I'm going to make another reference to my animator, which we're going to call animator. Okay. Now, I could drag and drop, right, if it's public. If I want to make it private, however, which is okay to do as well, like up here, I could make this private. That's okay too. Then I'd want to make this underscore animator private. How do I make that work? Well, I have to initialize it in my initialize method. So in my initialize method, which is down in here, I'll just put it underneath this one. I'll say this, that underscore animator is equal to get component. We know we have an animator component because we just added it in. And that's it. So now we made a reference to it. We made a reference to all of our components. Good. Now I can use it. Okay, what do I want it to say? I want to do the following. When I'm moving, or actually, how about this? When I'm stopped, that's the easiest one to do. I'm going to say this dot underscore animator dot set integer. I'm going to set an integer to the animator. What integer am I accessing? The name of the animator, the integer, which I named hero state. I'm setting the hero state to what value, right? To 0. So here's where I set the integer to change the state. The state is being detected here, state change, right? But here's where I'm setting the value. Okay, so I have to access the animator, set an integer, and change the hero state to 0. Okay, let's do the same thing, but I'm going to do it twice more here. Once when I move to the right, but this time I'm making a 1, and once when I move to the left. Again, I'm just going to do it up here. And there's other ways I could have coded this differently so that I wouldn't have to do this. So I could only do this once. But right now, whether I move to the right or move to the left, right, it's going to go to a walk state. So again, this would be set the animation state to walk. Right? And this one over here is set the animation state to idle. And I'm doing that by number values. And there's many ways to do this thing. You can use triggers, you can use floating points, you can use booleans. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. It's very similar though. Okay. All right, so we're able to walk and stop. This should be able to, this should do it, right? Let's check this out and see if it works. So run. And we run. Wait a minute, it didn't start right away. Look, and it didn't stop right away. How come? It kind of started after a while, and it continues after I fall. I don't want that. That's weird. Why is that happening? It's happening because if I go to here, right, something that says has exit time. That means the whole clip has to play before I play the next one. And there's also a transition blend that blends from one state to the other. I don't want that. I want to kill this, and I want to reduce this as much as possible so that there is very little time in between the changes of transition. And I'm going to do that every step. So on the way back, there's no exit time. So it's not going to keep walking. It's going to stop walking right away, right? And then I want to make this transition time as small as possible. Okay, that's it. Save. Let's try this out and see if it works. Bam. So now I'm idle. When I run, I run. When I stop, I stop. Run, stop, run, stop. And it kind of skids to a stop too, right? Right away. We've got some good animation going on. I'm not quite done yet. I want to add the jump state. So I got walk. I want to add jump, right? Again, there's a couple ways I can do this. I can do it with my animator, my animation screen, right? Where I can go here and go create new clip. I can do that. I could go into my, my hero tiles and pull in my jump animation. Here's my jump animation. And just drag and drop it and then add it in. The best way to do it is, since I have the animation window open already, just to do this. So create new clip. I'm going to kind of put it in its place inside the animation folder. And we're going to call this thing hero jump, right? Now there's no frames in here. So I'm going to take the hero jump frames right here and drag and drop them to the corner to the left where everything starts. Notice that there's only 3 of them. You got to be careful there, because if there's only 3, right, that's all it's going to have, right? And if I look at the samples, I want 6 samples, but there's only 3 of them. That's a problem. By the way, this happened to me earlier today. You can get rid of them by deleting if you want. And I can also drag and drop one at a time, like this one. One here. I've said 6 samples, right? Here's my first one. Here's my second one. Here's my third one. Here's my fourth one. And here's my 5th one. And my 6th one. So you see I'm adding in the different states for the jumping. This jumping is pretty slow, as you'll see, right? Okay, I'm good. So now if I look at my animator, I have another state, my hero jump state. Here it is. Now I got questions for you guys and girl, right? Girls, I want to understand what you think is the right thing. I'm going to start asking some questions. Okay, so I'm going to bug you, Janelle. So I have these 3 states, and I want your opinion. Can I go from the hero walk state to the hero jump state? Janelle, I want Janelle to answer me. I want to see her intelligence. She can figure this out. It's really dumb and easy, by the way. Huh? It's okay. Don't worry about it. So I'm in a hero walk state. I'm in a walk cycle. And can I go from walk to jump? What do you think? Yes. So if I do that, I'm going to go make transition to this. Can I go from jump back to walk? But I can't. But I'm just saying, if I want to, in real life, if I was going to play a character, can I go back from jump to walk? Chances are, yeah, you would be able to. Yeah, so I can probably go back this way. Right. How about from jump to idle? Should that be possible? But if I want to, can I? If I want to make, so I can make the transition from here to here. How about from idle to jump? Can I go right to jump from idle? Probably yes. You probably can in a as long as I make a transition. So now I've got this situation. So I'm going from one state to the other state to the other state. So all of them have states. Now I've already defined these 2, but I've got to define these 4 now, right? Make sense? Okay, sorry about that. You go back to what you were doing. No. I'm making. So in my jump state, 2 things, right? I want to be able to go from idle to jump. And I have 0 from my idle state, 1 from my walk state. Might as well make this 2, right? Just as an arbitrary number. You can make it whatever you like. 3, 4, 5, something else. So I'm going to go from this transition here, this line of transition. From my hero state to my jump state, I don't want an exit time. I want to reduce the numbers like we did before. I'm not going to do that again, right? It's nice and easy. And the same thing goes with the reason why the conditions for change. What's my condition for change? My hero state has to be equal to 3 or 2. Here we go. And the same thing on the way back. When I go back from this state to that state, I want to reduce this amount of time here. I want unclick has exit time, and I want to add a condition so that when it becomes equal to 0, it goes back to idle state. And the same thing goes from hero walk to jump, right? I want to reduce the time that I have over here, take away the exit time, and then add in a condition that makes it from 0 or from 1 to 2. So it's going to go to 2, right? equals to 2. Every time I jump, it's got to be equal to 2, right? And when I go back, this is the difference. I unclick the exit button and then go to here, reduce the amount of transition time as much as possible, and go from here to here. I'm going to go from 2 to 1, right? So all I'm doing is arbitrarily assigning values to my states. So this is state is 0, state is 1, state is 2, right? That's all I'm doing. Makes sense? Let's see it work. Now we got to code it. So in here, now that I got hero state 1, hero state 1, and hero state 0, I want to say so that anytime I'm falling or jumping, I show the jump animation. So here's my jump, is my falling. So when I fall, right, from another object, I want to show the jumping animation. So when I'm not grounded. And the way to do that, of course, is to do the same thing. So I'm going to say this dot underscore animator dot set integer, right? We're going to set the hero state to 2. Okay, makes sense? Let's see it in action and see if there's other problems, and there will be. So we're going to run this thing. Here's my little guy. I run, jump. Kind of slow, eh? Wait. I kind of speed it up so it goes like this a little bit, right? A little bit faster. How do I do that? Well, again, in my animator, if I click on my hero jump state, you can see that the speed is 1. I want to make that to 2, which is probably around right. Let's try that again. So jump. That's a little better. And if I fall, right, he's going to fall there too. So I've got jump state, walk state, and idle state for my hero. Pretty good. And it happens regardless of which way I turn. Right, left, doesn't matter. It always happens. Questions so far? Basic animation, frame-based animation that I've added to my hero object. No questions? You guys are all good? It's easy when you see it, but there's some tricks to making it work. Like you see all the little things we got to change, right? So I'm sure you're going to look at the video a couple times, right, for it to happen if you're going to use frame-based animation. Remember that frame-based animation is a bonus for your game, right? So you don't have to do it. It's not required. But I'll make it worth your while. You know, I'll give you some extra points for it. And again, it won't be required for the test that we're going to do next week, right? But if you add it in, I'll give you a bonus. So you have bonuses all over the place for this kind of stuff because it's extra work, lots of extra work, right? That's a different thing. So the question was, how can I make my animation increase or decrease according to player speed? Well, there's two things. One, you have access to all the stuff inside your animator, right, for each of the states. So remember, if I can do anything here in the inspector, I can do it with code. So I can change the speed of my animation state for my hero jump or whatever by slowing it down or speeding up. The other way to do it, which I don't recommend starting off, is when you make an animator, here's my controller, right, my animator controller script. Notice there's something called apply root motion. Apply root motion means that the player, it's the other way around, the player will match the speed of my animation. So if my animation is slow, my player is going to go slow. Actually, will travel slow. I'll show you this right now. So my animation is pretty slow. Here's my root. Here's what really happens. So I go really slow. Look, it's trying to go really slow. It doesn't make any sense. If I go back, it goes kind of travel. And I haven't changed anything. I haven't changed the velocity or anything. It just adjusts the velocity based on something called root motion. It's the root motion based on the animation state. This is great with 3D. Example, if I make a 3D rig, I'm animating a 3D object. We're going to get to that in the second half. And I already have my animation. I want my animation to match the walk cycle, right? I want the movement to match the walk cycle. And this is where we use apply root motion. And it'll actually walk. The motion will match the walk cycle, which is kind of cool, right? It does it automatically, calculates it for you, right? But yeah, the way to do that would be to access it through the animator. And again, example of that would be, what can I access with the animator? And if I was to try this out, if I say something like this dot underscore animator dot, what can I do, right? I can look at the avatar, right, as an example. I can look at the layer name. I can look at a bunch of layer count. I could playback time, how long it is as a property. I can change the root position, the root rotation, you know, a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of complexity to this if you look at it. And again, it's not required for what we're doing, but you can certainly look through. You can play a particular the whole animator. So if I click play, I can choose the state name as a string. There we go, right? And there's several different options here. I bet you this will do it for you right here. Watch. So if I go play, and let's say the name of my string would be the value. So we'll say something like you know, hero walk state. Then what's the layer if I have one, or I can choose the speed, you know, whatever layer, you know, player layer or whatever it's going to be. And then I don't know, normalize time, and there's other options here as well. So could you do it? Yes, and I would recommend you look at the API documentation for changing the speed of the thing. It's possible, totally. Okay. Any other questions about basic animation? All right, we need to create our player prefab now because we've done some basic animations, right? But our hero object is not a prefab, and I want to include this inside my main scene, right? My play scene. So I'm going to go to prefabs. I'm going to pull it, drag and drop my hero into my prefabs. So now my hero object is a prefab, but I got a problem. I want you to always remember that prefabs are terrible at trying to figure out references to objects that are not in the hierarchy. Example of this would be the camera object. Notice now we've lost a reference to the camera object, and we've lost a reference to the spawn point. Why? Because the prefab, there is no spawn point or camera object in the prefabs, and it doesn't know what to pull from. So we can't use these objects anymore as drag and drop points. We need to make references to them with code if it's in the prefab. I'm just letting you know, if you try and do this with a prefab and you're like, I don't know why, but it doesn't connect. Even if I press apply, it doesn't work. It's because prefabs cannot make references to objects in the hierarchy. Not without using another way. When you have to assume that it's been added to the hierarchy, and you have to get a reference manually. Okay, how do we do that? One thing, camera is a camera and the spawn point is a transform. That's impossible now. We have to make them both game objects. And second thing is, we don't need to make them as public. We can make them as private. So let's do that in our code. So up here, we have these two objects. We have them as public. We're going to take those objects, cut them. We're going to go to here, and we'll make these as private. And it's not going to be camera. It's going to be game object. We call the camera, and we're going to make a reference to the game object, which is the spawn point. Okay, so let's do two things we're going to do. Once we've done this, we have some other things to modify, right? So we're going to go down here, and a couple of things to change. Inside of our initialization method, we're going to make references to that. So we're going to say this, and by the way, probably a good thing to do is stick with our methodology for naming. Should be underscore camera and undo. I want to right click and I want to rename. That's the way to do that if I can, right? So I'm going to refactor rename. Instead of camera, it's going to be underscore camera, right? So I can change that. And the same thing with spawn point, refactor rename. When I call this, and you can do that in Visual Studio as well, spawn point, right? So it makes sense within our convention to make underscores private. So now, if I go down, we have some issues. One is we have to make our initialization. So we'll say this dot underscore camera is equal to game object. This is different. Dot find with tag, and we're going to look for something in the hierarchy that says main camera. That's how we do it. Okay. Why main camera? Because if you look at the hierarchy, the main camera is tagged with main camera. So find with tag main camera, that's what it's tagged with. Spawn point's already been tagged with spawn point. I did it last time, so I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to go down to this dot spawn point. is equal to game object dot find with tag spawn point. Now I'm making references with code as opposed to drag and drop. Okay? So those are all the main references we made so far. Now there's some changes we have to make to our code because it doesn't make any sense. For example, spawn point dot position is that doesn't make any sense. That means that game object dot position. It's actually game object dot transform dot position. So that would fix that problem. Okay? For the spawn point transform. For the camera, that's okay though, what we've done here already. Because if you look at the camera, we move the camera when the player moves, right? It's here, camera transform position is equal to vector. This is all valid. And we're not doing anything that's only related to a camera, so we don't have to worry about getting references to the camera game object itself. Like, what is the camera? Right? We know camera is a camera, but we want to make references to that in our scene. Okay, good. So that solves the problem there. Let's see if it works. If I go back to here, and if I run the game, right, you can see now that I have no problems. So there's nothing in the console that's a problem. And I can still do regular things and respawn. Right? This is good. Otherwise, if we try this out later on and we try to bring our hero into the game again, these would make no sense because there wouldn't be anything. There wouldn't be any references to the game objects anymore. So if I click away and click back, notice that camera and spawn point are still showing there, right? And yet, inside of our, oh, because I made them public. La la la. Bye-bye. We don't need them, right? Because we're making the same thing happen without any kind of reference by drag and drop. Make sense? So we've got our hero object now, and we've got him as a prefab. Let's put him back in the scene. So I'm going to save my scene, and I'm going to go back into my scenes folder and double-click on play. And let's remove this hero because this is not a prefab. This hero here is just a regular hierarchy, an object in the hierarchy. Delete this. And we'll bring in our hero object from our prefabs folder, right? Which we're going to kind of put into our scene at the spawn point, around the spawn point. We play the scene now. So that's a little bit close. That was a little bit close. Let's just move that over just a touch. Now we should be able to jump and do everything that normally can, as well as reset. We don't have any errors. We have animations. That's in our game. Looks pretty good. And very simple. Questions around animations. So we did animations with mechanim or mechanim, however you want to pronounce it. And we're using a state machine that's built in. That's the mechanim. Where we define states and how to move between states by defining a parameter. First, we define a parameter, our hero state. We call it whatever we want. This is an integer parameter. And we're setting arbitrary numbers for our states. This will be 0, this will be 1, this will be 2. And then we make transitions. Each of these bars here, these arrows, are transitions from one state to the other. And each of the transitions, we have to make sure that the parameter is correct. So for moving from hero idle to hero walk, we need the hero state itself, the parameter, to equal to 1. It's testing for that every single time. But we set all these parameters, again, inside of our script, which is here. So when we set the hero state to 1, and when we set the hero state to 1, mechanim, the state machine, is waiting for the state change to occur, and then we'll switch the clip from walk to idle to jump or whatever else we want. You can have many, many clips, as many as you want. For example, and here's something more complex. Can I fire and jump at the same time if I had a gun? And that's something you have to ask yourself in your game. Would you allow your character to jump and fire? The answer probably is going to be yes. Are you going to have a firing or animation, or some kind of shooting animation? Like maybe the character is going to bring his hands together and shoot before he and when he's done, he's going to bring his hands down, right? Whatever that animation is that you want it to happen, you have to think to yourself, in my state machine, will I allow this to happen? Should I allow it for me to go from jumping to firing? How about walking to firing? Yes. How about idle to firing? Yes. How about firing back to idle? Yes. To walking? Yes. And to jumping? Yes. So there would be another one up here, if you had some kind of shooting one, that you can do anything there. How about, though, if you had another state? Instead of a walk state, you have something like a run state. So when the hero's running, you can't fire your weapon because he's having his weapon from here. He's having it like this, so he's running like this. You can't fire your weapon when you're running. But and the other thing is, what about if the weapon is drawn, so in his hands, or if the weapon is away, in his back somewhere on the side, depending on what kind of weapon he has, right? That's a different animation, a different set. So idle with weapon drawn, idle with weapon put away. That's a totally different animation set that you could use. So you can imagine how complex this map can get, right? If you really wanted to. So you're running with your gun in your hand. Maybe it's like this. You're running, and then when you stop, you fire. That's a different kind of animation, right? Every time you change the animation state, again, it adds to this whole map, and you can make this as complex or as simple as you want. You can also add additional animators and different layers. So, for example, right now this is the base layer. I can also have a firing layer or a shooting layer, or one where the guy's armed, right? And you can move from one layer to the other. So really, really cool. You can make it as complex as you want, and you can manage it quite easily. All right, let's take a short break. We've done animations. I'm going to upload everything on GitHub for you, so you have everything for the basic animation step. And then we'll come back, and we'll add the coin, so we can do a pickup, and we'll complete the animation on the enemy, and see if we can get to UI. Okay?